Okay, so yesterday I believe we learned Daf Nun Aleph, I think it was. Daf Nun, okay. So let's just do a quick review of Daf Nun and then we'll go weiter. The first thing we learned yesterday was that the difference between the Orav and the Orav Kablan, but we learned an Orav Kablan, the Malva has the right to go directly to the Orav without even going through the Loiva, and an Orav Kablan is when there's a direct kinyan shibud made from the Orav directly to the Malva. We learned a regular Orav that always works, even without Kabbalas. So if it's for a Choiv, it's going to work. If it's a Kabbalan of Ksuba, it'll work. The only Aravis that doesn't work is a plain Aravis by Ksuba. And that's because there's two factors that say that it should not work. A is the Malva really isn't losing any money anyway, because it's Ksuba. It's not like he laid out money and now he's not going to get it back. That's number one. And number two is it's a mitzvah. Mitzvah ka'avi, meaning it's at the time that they're getting married, so it's like helping do the mitzvah. Masha Enkein. What if it was a kabbalah, but it was only done a year after they got married? He decided to sign on for the kshub, right? So there you don't have mitzvah kavod. He's not inducing the marriage, and therefore everybody agrees it wouldn't be mishabed. I'm disconnected. That just went in. Yeah, this went dead for a second. It could be the Armenians took over the waves over here. Now the hundreds and hundreds of people are trying to tune in. Like they're probably freaking out. You know what I was doing. Oh, great to see you. We got cut off in the middle of the year. I'm not sure why. We're going to try this again. There seems to be like a gremlin got into our equipment this morning. Not everything is working perfectly. Okay, so that was the case of Orav and Orav Kabbalah. Zok to Gemara weiter. Remember we had Mar Zutra, who Mar Zutra said that. Oh no, Mar Zutra's over here. I'm making a mistake. We had a shaila. What is the reason why the Gemara had a shaila over here? What is the reason why? No, it was Mar Zutra. Mar Zutra said that the Rabbi Yehuda says in the Mishnah that Ksubas Isha, Beziburis, that's only if the husband died and his estate is paying it. But if he himself is paying it, then it's going to be Bebeinis. That would dictate that the reason why the estate doesn't pay from paying this is because it's Yisayim. It's because you're taking from Nichsi Yisayim, and you're not supposed to collect from Nichsi Yisayim unless you make a shvua. Because there's always that concern, maybe it was paid already. The problem is, is the Brisa says very clearly the reason why Ksubas Isha is Biziburis. The Brisa says it's because a woman wants to get married more than a man and should be willing to get married, even though it's only Ziburis. So you see, clearly it has nothing to do with the fact of Yisayim. So therefore, Masuch is Augustlogan, and in fact, when Yehuda says Ksubas Isha is Biziburis, it even means by a divorce where the husband himself is paying it. That was the first shtickle we had yesterday. Then we had another Mar Zutra. Even though Mar Zutra got slugged up, he came back with a second halacha, and he said that shtar choiv hayoytze al yisoymim, even if the shtar said beferish that the loiva was mechayiv himself to pay with idis, which is of course more than the bayonis, that would be the default. Nevertheless, the children only pay from ziburis. And Abaye said, because no matter what rule, what arrangement, what chiyuv there is, Yisoimim always downgrade and they only pay ziburis. Rava argued, because Rava said that the reason why normally Yisoimim could pay from ziburis, a choiv, even though normally you pay from baininus, is because Me'ikar didn't even about choiv only have to pay back ziburis. We made it to Kanish, that they pay baininus, so by a Yosem we'll go back to the default. But by a Yosem, you'll never reduce the level of payment that would have been required, Me'ikar did. If there was a takana to upgrade the payment, so they'll relax that for a Yosem. But to allow Yisraelim to renege on a commitment, on a schayvis, no, that we wouldn't do. That was the machlokes Abaye and Rava. The Gemara brought rise back and forth, but the Gemara remained with the machlokes that whether or not will you allow Yisraelim to downgrade a real responsibility, or you will only consider reducing the takana that was made on behalf of the Yisraelim. Okay, beautiful. Then we had another question. This halacha that by Yisraelim we allow them to pay from ziburis, does that even apply to Yisraelim that are adults? Or maybe the takana is only for Yisraelim that are tanim, and therefore they can't protect themselves, so we have to protect them. And the Gemara said, the shaila is very simple. Is it a takana to protect the Yisraelim, and adult Yisraelim do not require protection? Or is it nothing to do with protecting the Yisraelim? The reason why Yisraelim pay back from ziburis is because the original reason why Chazal said they should pay from baininus is Latinal Das with Nelovin. Maybe Malvis would still be willing to lend out money as long as the loiva would have to pay them back from baininus. They don't think so far ahead. What if the loiva will die? That I want to be paid back with baininus as well, right? And Mati, you questioned that shaila later. You questioned that hasvara because why wouldn't the guy think that someone's going to die, right? I mean, I know a lot of people if they lend someone money and they know the guy doesn't mind to pay back, they want a mashkin, they want the guy's life insurance, right? It's a normal thing. And it's a normal thing if someone is borrowing a lot of money and he doesn't have a way to pay back, so he gives him he signs over the as a beneficiary, he signs over the life insurance. So vice versa, people do things. But I'm opinion. That's what the shaila was in the Gemara. So Abaye Kashisha told us, and the Gemara passed on Loch Lamaisa, that the takana is for Gedolim as well. Therefore, since the takana is for Gedolim as well, even an adult Yosem would also only pay back from ziburis. Then we had another shaila: would they have made this takana there's another takana we were talking about. I'm sorry. The next takana that we were talking about is ein nefroin min nechasim mishabodim b'makom sheish b'nei chayim. And the case is quite simple. Ruvain had two fields. He had two fields. Let's say he had a field that was baininus and he had a field that was ziburis. And Ruvain borrowed $100,000 from Shimon. Now there's two fields here that are meshubit to Shimon. Levi comes along and buys the baininus field. And after that happens, Ruvain defaults on his loan payment to Shimon. So Shimon now wants to come and collect the field. So there's two fields here. There's field one, the ziburis, that Reuben still has in his possession, but there's a field of baininus that Reuben sold to Shimon. So if I was the Malva, if I was Levi, I want the baininus. I don't want the ziburis. So I'm going to say, you bought a field that's meshubit to me. I'm taking your baininus. Zok the mission, you can't. As long as there's land available that's not sold, as long as land available that has not been sold, you have to take from that land, even if it's ziburis. And this rule goes a step further. What if after Reuben sold the baininus to Levi, he sold the ziburis as well, and he sold it to Yehuda? And now when the Malva comes, there's nothing left by Reuben, so Shimon has to collect from the Lekuchos. The halacha is that the person who bought the field first, so the Levi who bought the baitiness, he's protected still. Because if the Malva comes to take away his baitiness, they'll tell him, no. When I bought my baitiness, there was still a field there. I had sold later, too bad for Yehuda. You go to Yehuda, take his ziburis away. So not only will we not collect from a field that's available, will we not collect from a field that's sold, if there's one available, we won't collect. We'll only collect starting from the last field that was available, and we work our way back. Okay, so based on that rule, the Gemara wants to know, does this apply to a matan as well? It's understood why we'd have such a rule, because otherwise, when people would be afraid to buy properties, they're at such a high risk of losing the property. But if I could say, go to the last guy, so then I have a way to mitigate the potential loss. So based on that, the Gemara wants to know what would be the halacha by matana, because by matana, I'm not losing any money. So there, maybe we don't have to protect the guy getting a matana. Or do you say there's no such thing as a free lunch? And there's no way he gave a matana away. There's no way China gave Biden $10 million and didn't expect anything in return. So the Gemara brought a raya from the case of the Shchiv Merah, who gave away simultaneously 3 pieces of property, the Messiah, the Shol Shmeis, and the Arba Meos. And what do we say when the Bachoiv comes? We say that they all are considered having got it at the same time, and therefore they're all equally responsible to pay back the Choiv. But if the Shchiv Merah gave it away in layers, first he said, first I want to give Messiah to Pliny, and only after that do I want to give Shalosh Meis to Pliny, and only after that Arba Meis to Pliny. So he clearly said that I want the first matana to work, then the second, then the third. In that case, it says, Gleivim in the Achrein. All you do is collect from the Achrein, provided that there's enough money in what the Achrein got. What if there's not enough money there to pay? Then they can go to the next guy. And he can only go to the first guy as a last resort. So you see very clearly, it was a case of matana. He said, I'm giving you these properties, and yet you still see the earlier lekuchas are protected because of the later lekuchas. And that's where we got up to yesterday. Shmami no matana nami obed rabbanon takat. Zakama, you don't have a raya, because who said that case was a case of matana? Maybe it was a case of lekuchas. We're speaking by a bachai, which means he owed each of these 3 people money, and therefore it was first come, first serve. It wasn't a matana. Since it wasn't a matana, a bachai, that's why there's protection. How could you say that he was paying back a chayv over there? But Tanuka Amar, the lashon of the brisa that discusses the story, is the person said Tanu. Doesn't Tanu means give as a gift? Zok Gemara, no. What it means is Tanu b'chayvi. He said, give Reuven Messiah because I owe him money. He's my bachayv. Then give Shimon because he's my bachayv. And then give Levi because he's my bachayv. Correct the Gemara. If we're speaking about a chayv, why is it relevant who he gave it to first? It's relevant who borrowed the money first. When do the shibud chal on the loiva to the malva? It doesn't happen when the loiva pays back. It happens as soon as the loiva borrowed the money. So the lechs shtar, the man cut him. Forget about the shtar matana, who got first. That's relevant. It's not relevant. Look at when the liability occurred first, and then you say you go buster the first person. Zaktimur the lechs shtar. It was speaking by milval peh. There was no star, so there was no shibud generated at all on the karkoyis when the loan was made. So therefore, whoever got payment first, that person is considered to have acquired it first. Correct the Gemara, how could you say there's no star? Does it not say v'kol hakoydim b'shtar, Kamar? Yeah, but it's not referring about the star milva. There is no star milva, right? We just said it's a milva al peh. The star pekadita. It means whoever got paid first, he has more authority to keep the money. V'ba yiseva. Or you could say, afilu matana nam. You could say, speaking about a case of matana. So you're going to bring a raya from here that when you give somebody a matana, he's also protected from seizure. V'lo kasha. My gayvim min ha'achrein a nifsad ela achrein. Let's think about this. What was the case over here? There are 3 people who got it. 1 got it first, 2 got it second, 3 got it third. right? And there's another B'chayiv coming to seize away because his shibud came before everybody, right? What is he normally entitled to? He's normally entitled to beinus, right? So let's say the first guy got the beinus, and the second and third guys got ziburis. So he wants to take for the first guy first because I really want my beinus. I don't want ziburis. We tell him, no, you got to go to the last guy first. Zukt the Gemara that he has to go to the last guy first is lav dafka. Lav dafka. Could be he gets to go to the first guy and take away the beinus, and therefore you don't see by a matana that the guy's protected. So what does it mean? What it means is number one had the beinus, number 2 and 3 got ziburis. So really he would go to number 3, but we don't make such a zakah. You can collect from number 1 too because he wants his beinus. But number 1 doesn't lose. You know what number 1 does after the malva comes and takes away the beinus that he got as a gift? He can go to number 3 and say, I get your land now because I come before you. So therefore, all you have arrived from here is that I don't take a loss because I can go take. I will go get the ziburis, but I won't lose money. I'll lose my beinus property. So there's still a shibud on the beinus property, and the fact that I got the gift first does not protect me, and I don't get to keep my beinus. But it protects me a little bit. It protects me that I don't have to take a loss. I get to go now and collect from the previous guys and tell them, I'm sorry, what you were gifted was really mishubah to me. So I get it back. Sure. Yeah, of course. But you'd rather have a $100,000 piece of property of beinus than a $100,000 piece of property of ziburis. Because people don't like ziburis. People like higher quality land. No, Ikar Adin, we have a raya from a person that ziburis. The reason why they get beinus is that it's a whole thing. The whole thing that they get beinus is a takana, because a malva is going to say, "I'm not lending you money. What if you can't pay me? You have to take your property. I don't want ziburis. I don't want ziburis. I only like high quality property." So it's a takana. Of course, I mean there's no question that I don't have to pay back the whole loan. Not have to pay back, but even being paid back, you want good stuff. Right? Let me ask you a question. If I owed you $100,000, you want me to pay you in cash or in beer bottles that you'll have to go back and trade them in? It's supposed to same value, but you'd much rather have one than the other. Okay. My and all means is a nifsar la'achron, but avada his land is meshubit and he has to give it away. Or you could have much more simple pshat. The shavakul ladodi. Whoever said that it was different grades land? Maybe all 3 guys got the same thing. So if all 3 guys got the same thing, of course we'll go to the last guy. Okay, so we remain with a question. We don't know if someone getting a matana is protected. Next, what was the case? We already discussed this, where Bob seized the property from Reuven. Bob stole the property, and he sold it to Shimon. Shimon then went and invested $100,000 into improving the property, and the property actually went up in value because of that investment by $500,000. So now Shimon has a property worth $1.5 million. Reuven comes and says, that property that you bought the Brooklyn Bridge. It's my property. So Shimon says, okay, fine. So you'll take the property back. But I put in the $100,000, I improved it by $500,000, pay me up. We only force Reuven to pay what Shimon laid out. So now, after this ordeal where Shimon lost his field, he's owed $1 million by Bob for the field, but he's also owed $500,000 by Bob for the improvement. Although he already collected $100,000 of that from Reuven, so now total owing to him from Bob is $1.4 million. Right? Make sense? Now, out of that $1.4 million, he can collect $1 million. I'm sorry. No, because he got $100,000 from Reuven towards his expenses. Right? So he's only out $400,000 on that. So then he goes back to Bob and he can seize any property that Bob sold after he bought his property, but that's to cover the $1 million. To cover the $400,000, he cannot seize any properties. That he has to deal with Bob directly. So that is the payers. Okay, so Zok Gemara, my time. What is the reason for this? Amar Ula, Amar Shlakish, She'ain Ksuvin, because they're not written down. And as Rashi says, even though in the shtar, when I buy a property, I tell the seller that if for some reason I lose this property and I had invested money in it, you got to pay me for that also. So it is written down. But what it means it's not written down is the amount's not written down, because the shvach, when the shtar was written, when I purchased this property, the property had not yet increased in value due to my improvement, because I'm just buying it now, right? So it's not ksuvin, and therefore, how could a future lender or a future purchaser of Bob protect himself from that expense if it's completely unknown as to what it will be? I don't understand. In our Mishnah, in one breath, says pairs and l'shvach and mozn ishum banos, which is a t'nai ksuba that everybody has to give. So that's very much the ksivi, the chamad ksivi dami, because it's a t'nai bezdin, vikatani, and the Mishnah includes that as well in this rule of ein loitziyim. Amalei Ula answered, hasam meikara hachi yiskin. When the t'nai ksuba was made, it was made very interesting. It was layers. The main money of the ksuba, that is mishubit, and she can collect from his karkoyas. But when they said you mechuyev to pay mozn ishum banos, that's ksuva nein etzel b'nei chayrin, then ksuva nein etzel mishubadim. The original takana was that mozn ishum banos you could only connect from b'nei chayrin. The woman cannot collect it. The banos cannot collect it from the chasam mishubadim. And this is I'm not the only one who says this. The Chaynam Rabasi, Rabbi Yochanan, L'Shein Ksuvin. They're not written down. Amalei Reb Zeir Rabasi. So this was a parallel conversation, it's concurrent. V'amazon Yishav Abanos Techman Dachsiv Dami. V'Katan Ein Matziyim. Amalei Meikar Hachi Askun Ksuvin Ein Eitzel B'Dei Chayrin. Then Ksuvin Ein Eitzel Meshubad. So it's the same thing said by other people. Reb Chanina Amar. Reb Chanina says topic is it's Ein Ksuvin. It's the Lefisha Ein Ksuvin. In other words, even if it would have been written down in the shtar ksuba, nevertheless, you still can't collect from mishubadim. You know why? It's not a set amount. We have no idea how much mezonis will be required. Something that's undefined will never be mishubit to the chosim that get sold. Only things that are defined. Ibaylu. The Gemara wants to know. L'Rabbi Chanina. He says the reason is l'shein ksuvin. So what does he mean? It's ksuvin the ksuvin boy. You need to have, in order to be able to collect from a shubadim, A, it has to be defined, and B, it has to be written down. Or maybe what it means, ksuvin, ksuvin. If it was set amount, even if it was a milva al peh, but it was a fixed amount, maybe you could collect from the chashem shubadim. Tosfos argues, but Rashi suggests that the shaila here is that maybe Rabbi Chanina holds that even on milva al peh, you'd be able to be goyim b'mishabdi. And the only thing you can be going to mishabdi is something that wasn't clearly defined at the time of the hava. Tashma, let's see. Ditmar. Misha meis v'niach shtei banos uben shtei banos uben. Now the halacha is when someone dies, Rachman l'Tlam, his daughters, even though they don't yarshin, the sons yarshin everything, but mezainos they get, as we just discussed, not from the chasam mishubadim, but they're entitled to mezainos. They're entitled to live off the estate until they get married. They're also entitled to something else. They're entitled to dowry. They're entitled to nadin. The nadin is a fixed amount. You know how much the nadin is? 10% of the estate. So let's say the estate was valued at $1 million. Every daughter that gets married gets $100,000. And we had Shilas and Subis. Well, the first daughter gets $100,000, gets 10% of the estate. Maybe the second daughter only gets $9,000 because the remaining amount is $900 by the time she comes around. So the Gemara discusses how that's done and how that's equalized. But whatever the case is, here was a case. Someone died. There are two daughters and there was a son. And what happened was, the Kadma Rishona, the first daughter, the older daughter, became a kala, she got married, Mazel Tov. The Natla Isa the Chasam, she took $100,000 out of the estate, because that's what she's entitled to for her dowry. And the second daughter was not yet a kala. And what happened was, Rahman Latzlan, now their brother died. So now they're no longer just getting specific benefits. Now they're the Yarshim, because there is no more son here. Is Parshas Pinchas? Is the Parsha B'nai Tzlachah in Parshas Pinchas? I don't know if it is or not, but if it is, then we have the Lublina strikes again, because this is Parshas Pinchas. Until the son died, so now they're Yarshim. So now the question is does she get to take her benefit from the estate? She's a partner in the estate now, so maybe she shouldn't get. Amr Rabbi Yochanan Shnia Vitra. The second girl, since she just had a large windfall, she's not going to go nitpick and say, I want that 100,000. How could you say such a thing, that she walks away from the 100,000? No, first you get your 100,000, and then the remaining 800 they'll split. How do I know this? Because Gedolim Mizu Amru Moitzin leParnasa, they Moitzin leMezonos. Do you know the halacha is that when this girl is collecting her $100,000, or each of these two girls collect $100,000, they'll even go take that money away from somebody who bought a property from the father. So they can actually seize property for this dowry. That's how tough the requirement is. They might see them as Zionis, but from the Zionis you don't take them the Chasam Mishubadim. The At Amrit Shnia Vitra, you're going to say that she was Mevater? It's such a strong chiyuv that you'll even take away from the Kuchos. So how could you argue that she would give that up? Correct the Gemara, but Parnasa to make its kaitza, and Michtav v'lo chsiva. This Parnasa is not written anywhere, the farish that it's owed, yet it is a set amount. Everybody knows it's 10% of the estate. Nevertheless, the Kamaitziah, and clearly Rav Chanina said, Rav Chanina is telling us that Moitziah the Parnasa. So our shayla that we had is if you need ksuvim uchasuvin, you have a right from here that even though it's not ksuvin, nevertheless you're still Moitziah. So you see, ksuvin is enough. In other words, even a milva b'shtar, you can go them in the chasam mishabadim. It is ksuvin, but it's not ksuvin. Right. Okay, so shiny parnasa, the kivin the islay kala command chsivadon. In fact, you say the same thing about parnasa. Since there's a koil, everybody knows that there was marriage here, and everybody knows that there's this chayvis. So you say that that's as if there was a koil over here. Okay, Gemara. Rashi the islay kala mishah shamei sa'ab. The moment the father dies, hakoil yoidin shabas naitelas isinachos. At that point, everybody already knows that there is this liability to the estate. What happens if Mesu b'nesei and nizonis b'nechasim b'necharen and he nizonis b'nechasim b'shabbat? What happens is Reuven marries a woman, and this woman had a child prior to Reuven's marriage to her. So Reuven tells his wife, "I'm accepting upon myself to fully support your daughter for 5 years," right? So now he has a contract that he has to support this girl for 5 years. He also, should he have children with this woman, he's mukhliya to support them as well. Should he die, the estate pays, right? But this was a separate rule, a separate ischayvus that he made to support his wife's daughter for 5 years. What happens if they get divorced in 2 years, the marriage doesn't survive, and she marries a second husband, and the second husband also makes a commitment for 5 years? You don't say that the first guy's released. They're both mukhliv to support her for 5 years. She doesn't need so much food, so he has to give it to her in cash, because the commitment is a strong commitment that withstands anything. So what happens if it was Mesu? What if this Mr. Reuven died, Rahman al-Islam? So now he has 2 daughters and a stepdaughter. We know from his Zaynos, they only get from B'nai Chayrin. They cannot seize property away from anybody. They could only take from maternity estate. But Vihi, this stepdaughter, she gets more rights. You know why? She has the status of Baal Chayv. It was written in the contract. It was a separate chiyuv. So once again, you see, Zok Rashi, you see from here, Alma Kivin the Kaitzi Chomei Shanim, since this wasn't written, it was not a written agreement. It was just agreed upon between the husband and the wife, but it was a fixed amount. So even though it wasn't written in the Ksuba, Govim Mishavdi Krab Chanina Bekoshalu. So you have arrived from here, in fact, that even if it's Ksuvin, even if it's not Kesuvin, you're still going to Mon. Maybe they didn't just make up in between themselves that he was going to support the stepdaughter for 5 years. Rather, they made a kinyan. Ustam kinyan l'ksiva. If they were makabel kinyan, then we can assume it was recorded and it was written down. So it was a case where it's ksuvin and there was ksuvin. For Gemara, ihachi banois nami. Then if there was a kinyan made to all his commitments, so then that means there was a kinyan made to guarantee that he's going to support his daughters as well. So why don't they get to collect from the chosim mishubadim? They're only makabel kinyan lagabi the commitment to support his stepdaughter, but they were never makabel kinyan to accept to support his own children that he's going to have with this woman. My pasta. Why in the world would they do that? Why would they only make a kinyan for one and not for the other? Dr. Gemara, bas ishtoi the havoi b'shas kinyan. Very simple. She's bringing a daughter into the marriage. There's something specific that they're discussing. He'll be makabel kinyan to support them. How can he be makabel kinyan to support future children that he might have? So therefore, mahani la kinyan. But bita, his own children that he's only going to have with this woman later, the loy havoi b'shas kinyan, loy mahani la kinyan. Frank the Gemara, why are you making the assumption that his own children weren't born yet? Maybe his own children with her were born yet. Frank the Gemara, milo yaskinan, the havi tarvaya b'shas kinyan. Maybe both children were around b'shas kinyan. How does that make sense? I'm marrying a woman who had a daughter. We didn't have children yet. We're getting married now. So how could our future children be around now? How is that possible? So it's more very simple. The girsha v'hadra. So Reuben was married to this woman, and he had children. He had daughters, and then he divorced her. Now she couldn't have married anybody else because he can't marry her again, right? If she had married somebody else and had a daughter, he cannot marry her again. So what must have happened is this woman had a daughter, and then she married Reuben, right? And then they had daughters. Then he divorced her, and then he married her back with all the three daughters. So that must be the case where they're all around. So if that's the case, once again I'll ask, why is the shibud only on his stepdaughter and not on his own children? His daughters, what's mechayiv him to support them? The t'nai bezdin of the ksuba. It wasn't a personal commitment. It was a t'nai bezdin of ksuba. Therefore, loy mahani lakin. The king does not help for it. But bas ishtoi, the lav b't'nai bezdin kachla, she's not getting b't'nai bezdin. That's a private agreement. Mahani lakin. What's the logic behind that? If anything, it's t'nai bezdin should be more of a heschayvus. The chimigra gara is a worse because it's a t'nai bezdin. Elabitoi, even the t'nai bezdin kachla, since she's eating with a t'nai bezdin, aim at shori atmasa. You know what the concern is? The concern is maybe they already got money. Maybe before the husband died, he gave them a taltlin. He gave them something. Because since it's such a serious chiyuv, we're concerned more that he paid it off. That's the reason why they cannot collect from the chosim mishubadim. But we're not concerned that he would have done that to his stepdaughter who he made a commitment to. Tashma, Amar Abnasan. Once again, we want to know if you needed to be ksuvin in order for the kuchos to be susceptible to seizure, or if it's enough that it's ksuvin. Aim aside. When do we say that you don't collect from the sheni, you collect from the rishon? Is bisman shekadam mekray shel sheni l'shvacha shel rishon. So what was the case that we had here? The case was where Bob stole a property from Reuben and gave it to Shimon. At what point did Shimon's property go up in value? Did it go up in value before Bob sold a different property, or did it go up in value after Bob sold another property? That's when the Rishon cannot collect from the Chosim Mishubadim. Because when the Sheni bought it, he had no idea that there was going to be Shvach coming down the road of an earlier sale that he might be liable for. What if Reuven and Shimon bought the field from Bob? What if Shimon improved the property and then Bob sold another property to Levi? At that point, Levi knew already that there was another field that was sold by Bob, and there's higher liability for that field because it's already known that that property had improved in value. There, goyva min nechasim mishubadim. You could even be goyva from the nechasim mishubadim. That's for sure not ksuvin, because at the time of the original sale, it wasn't known how much I'm going to improve the property. Yeah, we still say that if it's there, he's mukhlit to pay. Ama mishum delay kadam who what you see here is that it has nothing to do with ksubin, and it has nothing to do with ksubin. It's for a completely different reason, because it's not around. So you almost have a raya against everybody. Zokt Rashi, Alma mishum lekadamu v'lav mishum ksubin ksubin. You're making these rules as ksubin has nothing to do with that. If it wasn't ksubin, even if it wasn't ksubin, and it wasn't ksubin, but if it was there before the second person bought property, he's accepting liability for that as well. Zoktamor, you're right. Tanoyu. It's actually machlokes tanoim if you need ksuvim or if it's just about what came first. We're clearing the shaila according to the Tana who holds it's not totally what came first, and according to that Tana, we want to know if you need ksuvim as well or only ksuvim. So where do you see a machlokes? The Tanya ein maitin lachilos peris ulishvach hakoyis ulamazan ishav abanos minachasam mishabadim. Right, this is similar wording to our Mishnah. Lefi she'ein ksuvin. So our Mishnah doesn't have these words, but the Brisa specifies lefi she'ein ksuvin. Amar Rabbi Yosy said, I don't understand. Even if they were ksuvin, even if they were written, they're not kotzav anyway. So regardless, you wouldn't be able to collect from the chasam mishubad. So you see that there's Tanoim who hold. The earlier case proved that there's a Tana who holds it's all totally what came first, but you still see here there's a discussion of if you require ksuvin or ksuvin. So you see that there's a difference of opinion as to what would allow the person to seize from the lukuhas. Now we have our next part of the mission. The rule is if I find a mitzvah, I say, Yankel, I have your wallet, here's your wallet, there's $500 cash in it. And Yankel says 500, I lost the wallet with 1,000. Maybe you stole the 500, make a shvuah. Because of takana, we don't make the finder make a shvuah. Amr Bitzak. What happens if you get shnei kisin kashurin matzasli? The malva, not the malva, the loser, the owner said, I had 2 bundles of cash. Each one had $10,000 in it, but they were tied together. They wouldn't just mysteriously disappear. If you have 2 bundles tied together, they normally would remain together. And the finder said, I'm sorry, I only found 1 bundle. There, nishba, he has to make a shvuah that he only found 1 bundle, because the logic would say that the other bundle wouldn't have disappeared. What about if I say shnei shvarim kishurin matzasli? What happens if the owner says there were 2 oxen tied together, but the finder says no, I only found 1. There ain't a nishba. Then he doesn't swear. What's the difference? My time is shvarim and not chimei. Just because I left 2 oxen tied together, they could have easily separated, and it's very reasonable that the finder only found 1 of them. But kisin loim and not chimei 2 wallets tied together wouldn't mysteriously separate. So therefore, it's a stronger time that he has to swear. What about shnei shvarim kishurin matzasa? What if the loser tells the finder, I know that you found 2 oxen together? The finder said, no, matzasi. I did find 2, but I already brought you back the other one. Now I'm bringing you back the second one. So it's like a moed b'iktos, harei ze nishpa. Correct the Gemara, this whole member of Yitzchak doesn't make sense. Because didn't we say in our Mishnah that the Kala that you never swear? So correct the Gemara for Yitzchak, less lay. Does he not hold of our Mishnah? Why is he even discussing a shvuah at all? Dr. Gemara, who the Amr Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov? In fact, we have a Tana that says differently. Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov says differently. What did Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov say? The Tanya Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov, it happens sometimes. Nishba al tainis atzmai. Sometimes a person will swear even though if it wasn't for him, you wouldn't have known anything. We call it peshas or pesheter. He's the one who came and brought forward that he found something, so you would think, he did not say anything, and then he would have been clean. Sometimes you swear even though you brought it forward. Mana lavicha biyadi. What if I go to somebody and say, your father died, you didn't know this, but I had borrowed from him $100, I owe you now $100. But the echalt of pras, while he was alive, I paid him back already $50. So I only owe you 50. Hareze nishba. He has to swear. And this is what I meant. Had he not said anything, the Yorush should never have known anything at all. It's only because of me that you even know that I owed your father anything. So you have to accept my statement that I had already paid back some. No. The Chacham say, of course you don't make him swear, because had I not said anything, I wouldn't have been mechuyev anything. Therefore, you have to trust him when he says that he owes 50. What's his svara? Why doesn't he also agree that since you wouldn't have known that I owed anything, so you should trust me? Amarav, it's speaking b'toy and katan. You know what happened? It's speaking where the Yorish didn't know something, but the Yorish was a katan, and the Yorish said, "You owed my father $100, pay me back." So it's not totally that he brought it up. A katan suggested it. That should have no impact at all. Katan midi mishashe isbei. Does the tvi of a katan have any impact at all? But non einish boina al tainis cherish shoy to the katan. You're right. That's not what it means. What it means is my katan gadol actually was an adult child who came after you and said, you owed my father $100. My karloi katan. So why are we referring to him as a katan, making a demand of the loiva? The lagava mili the aviv katan who, because he doesn't know exactly what happened by his father. He doesn't know if there was a payment paid. So if there was a payment made already, so he can't be such a bari. He's making a taina, but he's being teveya, but not with the same confidence that he would if he would have been his own affair. Exactly Mati's question. It's tainis acherim voidos atzma. No, this is different because yes, it's taka tainis acherim, but he's only mechuv shvua because he admits it. Frankly, more that is the classic case of moedim miktas. You're saying Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov holds that sometimes even in such a case you could swear. Everybody holds that you swear when I'm on you 100 and you're moedim 50. Kulu tainos anami tainis acherim voidos atzma. That is what everybody holds that over there. The guy swears. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov started coming up with the chiddush that even though nobody else holds he swears, I hold he swear all the atzma. When is that? Ella b'de Rabba kamifagi. We have to say that they're arguing in Rabbah. The Amar Rabbah said, and the machloek is as to whether or not if someone else among him, and that someone is tainis acherim, right? It's not tainis atzmai, right? So the Gemara says, how could you say? The Gemara asked a minute ago, how could you say that Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says that al tainis atzmai, there's a tainis acherim here, right? It's because the God was wanting him. So the question is, should that be a case of moedim miktas? The classic case of moedim miktas is when the guy who's moneying me is the guy I dealt with. He's the malv himself. He's moneying me with 100% confidence, and then I'm being moedim miktas, right? The case of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov is the gadol who's moneying me is not 100% sure. The tviyah is not as sure as the tviyah is the malv itself. This is the tviyah by the son of the malv. So that is the machlokes if that falls under the rule of moedim miktas. Why should it and why shouldn't it? Because if Rabbah explained why is it that a moedim miktas swears. Why is moedim miktas swearing? Why am I not believed? Because chazaka ein adam meiz panav b'fnei bal chayva. Normally, a person would never dare deny something that is bal chayv said. And v'hai v'chulu boy lemichperle. This guy really wants to deny everything, but he can't. How could I face this guy who I borrowed money from and deny completely? A person cannot do that. So he doesn't have a migu that he could have been koy for a koil because he couldn't have been koy for a koil. A person can't be koy for a koil from somebody who borrowed money from. The ha'dlai kafri, the reason why he wasn't koy for a koil, mishum the ein other meyos panav b'fnei b'koil. So if that's the case, then we're choshed that he's lying. If we're choshed that he's lying and he's wrongfully being koy for even in half, so how can we make him swear? We're going to make him swear falsely. The teretz is, how is he never to make a shua? What makes you think that if he's lying about what he owes, he won't lie swearing as well? So the teretz is because he's not a crook. He really wants to pay off the loan in full. But the problem is he doesn't have the money. The haidla is because ishtamute hu the kamishtametle. He's just trying to push it off. I'm only admitting that I owe you 50 out of 100, but my intent is when I have the other 50, I'll come back and say, I really owed it to you. Here's the other 50. As soon as I have money, I'm going to come pay you back. There, the Torah said, because he's an honest guy. He's an honest guy. He doesn't want to steal. So he's not choshet to swear falsely. So such a guy who really wants to pay back, but he can't, if we ask him to swear, he won't want to swear falsely and he'll pay. So therefore, that is the psychology behind the chiyuv of Eshus Moed Mitzvahs. But it's all predicated on the fact that you have a svara of ein adam meis pana b'fnei bal chayva. He's not believed to say half because he would have never have completely denied it. The question here is, when I face the malva face to face, there's a good argument that I can't be kofer hakoil. But what if I'm only faced with the malva's child? Maybe there I would be comfortable being kofer hakoil. So Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov holds loishna boy v'loishna b'vnoi. There's still a svar of ein adam meis. I guess it has nothing to do with the fact that you know I'm lying. It has to do with the fact that I benefited from you. How can I dare deny the whole thing? So therefore, the psychology model that's mechayev a regular shvus moed mitzvahs works here equally well when the malva is no longer alive and the loiv is being kofer, being moed mitzvahs. He doesn't consider it a meishav aveda because there's the ein adam meis. Rabbanan says no. Boy, who the ein meis. The malva himself, you know I'm lying to you. I can't lie to you into your face. But he would have no problem lying to the child, and therefore the fact that he didn't deny the whole thing, we consider him as a meishav aveda, and therefore he does not have to swear at all. So the whole question is, if this case dealing with the child of the malva, does that fit the profile of a moed mitzvahs? Okay, we'll stop here. We'll tomorrow.